1:17 a.m. The shrill buzz of Chuck McAllister's private line jolted him from sleep. 3 rings. Never more. That was the hospital's protocol. He sat up in the dark, his chest tightening as he reached for the phone. Linda stirred beside him, her voice half caught in a dream. "Who is it, honey?" He didn't answer. "This is Dr. Renee Carter from Novant Health Presbyterian." The voice on the line was professional, steady but heavy. "Is this Mr. Charles McAllister?" "Yes." "It's about your daughter, Claire Whitmore." Chuck was already throwing off the covers, heart racing. "What happened?" "She was admitted through the ER tonight after what appears to be an acute panic-induced collapse. She's 7 months pregnant. We had to deliver the baby via emergency cesarean." Chuck's throat closed for a second. Is the baby?" "Claire is conscious, but weak. The baby, Grace, is in the NICU. She's stable." But it was close. Linda sat up now, eyes wide, watching him as he stood barefoot on the cold hardwood floor. "We'll be there in 15 minutes. He hung up. No explanation. No small talk. Just grabbed the first pair of trousers and shirt he could find and started dressing. "Chuck, what is it? What happened?" "It's Claire," he said, not looking at her. "She's at Novant. They had to deliver the baby." Linda's breath caught. "What? What do you mean, deliver? What happened?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." 10 minutes later, their black town car tore through the empty streets of uptown Charlotte. The city, a quiet grid of finance towers and ghost-lit condos, passed in streaks of steel and neon. Chuck didn't speak. Linda kept wringing her hands in her lap. "Do you think it was labor? Early labor?" Chuck's jaw clenched. "She doesn't just collapse, Linda. Not Claire. Not without a reason." She glanced at him, unsure. "You don't think it was Troy?" "I don't think anything. Yet." The hospital smelled like bleach and lost time. A young nurse at the front desk perked up as they approached. "Claire Whitmore?" Chuck asked. The nurse nodded. "3rd floor, maternity recovery. Dr. Carter is waiting." The elevator ride felt like the longest 30 seconds of Chuck's life. When the doors opened, Dr. Carter, early 40s, efficient posture, tired eyes, stood just outside room 308. "Mr. and Mrs. McAllister?" "How is my daughter?" Chuck asked, skipping any formality. "She's conscious and stable. She suffered a prolonged panic episode, accompanied by arrhythmia and shallow breathing. We had to deliver the baby due to fetal distress. Grace is in the NICU now. She's very small, but responsive. And Claire? She's emotionally fragile, disoriented, exhausted. She's been asking for you." Chuck looked through the window. Claire lay against crisp white sheets, her face pale, eyes open but unfocused, hands resting lightly on her abdomen, as though expecting to still feel something there. "Troy?" he asked suddenly. The doctor hesitated. He brought her in, said she fainted after an argument, but since then, he's been preoccupied, asking about insurance coverage, when she can be discharged. He hasn't been in her room once. Chuck didn't respond. He was already walking through the door. Claire turned her head slightly. Her lips moved, barely. "Daddy." He was at her side in 2 strides. Linda followed behind, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "Oh, honey." Chuck knelt beside the bed and took Claire's hand in his. "You scared us." "I'm sorry," Claire whispered. "I didn't know where else to go. I couldn't breathe." "Breathe now," he said. "Just breathe. We're here." She nodded slightly, but her eyes had that hollow shimmer, like glass, stretched too thin. "I couldn't tell if it was real," she murmured. "The fear, or if I'd finally made myself crazy." Linda took her other hand. "Sweetheart, no, you're not crazy. I've been questioning everything, every thought, every instinct." He kept saying I was too emotional, that the stress was hurting the baby, that I was remembering things wrong. Chuck exchanged a glance with Linda. A cold knot formed in his stomach. Claire's voice broke a little. "I found messages on his phone from someone named Erin, a woman from his office. He said I was invading his privacy, that I was paranoid, but they weren't just work messages. They were—" She paused, her face tightening. "Intimate." "Did you confront him?" She nodded. "And then I collapsed." Chuck leaned forward. "Do you believe he's having an affair?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but I believed it enough to question everything I thought I knew about our marriage, about myself." She closed her eyes for a moment. A tear slid down her temple. "He said no one would believe me if I told anyone, that my hormones made me unreliable, that I was making scenes in public, that I needed rest and less screen time, that I was addicted to conflict." Chuck sat back slowly. The old anger flickered beneath his calm exterior. Not rage, but resolve. The same resolve that built a billion-dollar real estate empire out of tenacity and precision. He studied his daughter, thin, fading, fighting to hold her sense of reality together. And then he said, very gently, "Claire, I believe you." Her eyes opened again, slowly. "You do?" "Of course. And I'm going to find out what Troy's really been doing behind the scenes." She hesitated. "Daddy, please, just don't make a scene." He smiled softly, squeezing her hand. "Sweetheart, I don't make scenes. I write endings." Outside in the hallway, Chuck's phone buzzed. It was a text from his personal assistant, Dana. "Pulled financials on Troy. You'll want to see this." Chuck stared through the window into the NICU down the corridor. A nurse adjusted something beside a glowing incubator. Tiny, fragile, alive. "Grace." Chuck tapped back. "Run full background. Legal, financial, digital." He slipped the phone back into his coat pocket. The McAllisters had just declared war, and Troy Whitmore had no idea what was coming. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matter to me either way. Claire watched the ceiling lights blur as the nurse rolled her back to her room. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and sterile air. Her arms felt heavy, but her mind wouldn't stop moving. Grace was alive. That should have been enough to settle the storm. But the storm wasn't inside her anymore. It was behind her. Standing in the waiting room in a crisp navy blazer, checking his emails while asking about insurance deductibles. Troy. Claire closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. Back in her room, Linda fluffed the hospital pillow behind her gently. "You need to rest," she said. "Let your body catch up." Claire nodded, but her voice was barely audible. "I can't rest. Not yet." Chuck stood near the window, his phone in hand, but his focus firmly on his daughter. He was silent, listening, watching. Claire looked at both of them. "Have you talked to Troy?" Linda hesitated. "He was here, briefly, but he didn't come in." Claire finished the sentence herself. "He said you needed time," Chuck replied evenly. Claire gave a faint, humorless laugh. "He's always saying that I need time, that I'm too reactive, that everything's my fault because I feel too much." Linda sat beside her and took her hand. "That's not love, sweetheart." "He used to bring me flowers," Claire whispered, eyes distant. "Every Sunday. Yellow lilies. He remembered I liked them from a random conversation. He said I was his piece, that he couldn't wait to build a life with me. Chuck didn't move. His stillness was a signal in itself. He had learned in business and in fatherhood. That stillness was the quiet before something permanent. Claire turned toward him slowly. "Do you think I made this up?" she asked, eyes raw. Chuck met her gaze without blinking. "No," she exhaled shakily, "because part of me still wonders if I imagined it. If maybe I did read too much into those messages. If maybe he was just under pressure. He said he was stressed about the baby, about money, about work." "That's what manipulators do," Linda said gently. "They make their lies sound like love." Claire looked at her mother. "But what if I'm wrong?" Chuck stepped forward. "And what if you're right?" Silence hung between them. The door opened softly. Troy stepped in, smiling the way he always did when he entered a room, like he already owned it. "Claire," he said warmly, "you look better." She didn't answer, just studied him. Troy walked over, glancing at Chuck and Linda with a polite nod. "Thank you for coming, Mr. and Mrs. McAllister. I know this is a difficult time." Chuck's silence was an iron wall. Troy turned back to Claire. "I was so worried last night. When you fainted, I didn't know what to do. You weren't responding. I did everything I could to get you help." Claire's voice was soft. "I don't remember fainting." "You were overwhelmed. You've been pushing yourself too hard lately." Linda stood. "We'll give you two a moment." Chuck didn't move, not an inch. "Actually," he said, "I'd like to stay." "Claire?" Claire looked between them, then back at Troy. "That's fine," she said quietly. Troy hesitated. "All right." He sat in the chair beside her bed and took her hand. She didn't squeeze back. "I know the past few months have been hard. The pregnancy, the hormones, the changes. We've both been adjusting." Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. "What exactly have you been adjusting to, Troy?" He blinked. "You know, the dynamic shift. Your energy's been different. More anxious. You've questioned things that didn't need questioning. Like Erin." There it was. Claire didn't look away. "Let's talk about Erin." Troy looked surprised. "We already did." "No, you dismissed me." He smiled again, gentle, as if correcting a child. "You misread a few text messages. She's just a co-worker, Claire. We've had lunch a few times, yes, but that's it. It's nothing inappropriate." "I found messages," she said. "Flirty, personal, ones I never saw in your work emails." "That's not how it was," he said smoothly. "Claire, you've been under a lot of stress, and that can distort perception." Chuck stepped closer. "Let me ask you something, Troy." Troy turned. "Of course, sir." "Did you or did you not install software on Claire's phone?" Troy's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "Tracking software, monitoring apps, anything that gave you access to her communications or location? Why would I do something like that?" He laughed softly. "That's invasive. Illegal." Chuck nodded once. "You're right. It is." Claire stared at him. Troy straightened in his seat. "Mr. McAllister, I know you're upset. Anyone would be. But Claire and I have a marriage, and marriages go through phases. We've just been navigating ours." "By eroding her trust?" Chuck asked, voice quiet but lethal. "By rewriting her reality, by controlling her narrative until she questioned whether she was even allowed to feel angry?" Sir, I don't think this is a productive conversation. No, Claire said suddenly. Her voice cut through the room like glass. I do. Troy looked at her. I think it's the first honest conversation we've had in a year, she said. I think I've been swallowing your truths and choking on mine. Troy stood. Claire, this isn't the place. No. It's exactly the place. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. Again and again. I gave you silence when I should have demanded answers. And now I'm done asking. I want to know the truth about Erin, about the texts, about everything. Troy's jaw flexed. I want a full copy of your phone's data, Claire said, and your cloud backups. I want the truth, not what you say it is, what it actually is. Troy looked at Chuck, then Linda, then back at Claire. You're emotional, he said. You just gave birth. Let's revisit this when you're more... I'm more clear now than I've been in months, Claire said, her voice steady. And you don't get to decide when I'm ready. Troy glanced at Chuck one more time, weighing something invisible, then forced a tight smile. I'll get you what you need. As he turned and left the room, Claire let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Chuck walked back to her side. You were incredible, he said quietly. I was terrified, Claire whispered, but I think I needed to hear myself say it. Linda reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder. You did, and we heard you. Claire looked toward the window. Outside, the city still glittered like nothing had changed. But something had, something permanent. And for the first time in a long while, Claire wasn't afraid of what she might find. She was afraid of what she might finally know. Claire hadn't slept. Not really. Every time her eyes closed, her mind dragged her back to the hospital hallway. Troy's face when she asked for the truth. Chuck's voice, calm and terrifying. Her own voice, steady when it should have trembled. She stared at the ceiling, her fingers tracing faint circles on the edge of the blanket. The room was dim, except for the soft blue glow of the monitor by her bed. It beeped in slow, rhythmic tones, a lullaby for the wounded. She turned her head toward the small window, where morning was just beginning to bloom. The world outside kept spinning. Inside, everything had stopped. A gentle knock tapped against the door. Claire expected her mother or another nurse. But when the door opened, it was someone she didn't recognize. A woman, early 30s. Clean, professional look. Brown hair pinned in a loose bun. Light gray blazer over a cream blouse. She held a clipboard, but didn't look like a nurse. Claire Whitmore, she asked softly. Claire pushed herself up slightly. Yes? The woman offered a warm, careful smile. My name is Erin Caldwell. The name hit like cold water. Claire's hands froze mid-motion. I'm sorry to show up like this, Erin continued. I would never do this if it weren't important. But I think you deserve the truth. Claire said nothing. Just watched her, studied her, waited. Erin stepped inside, but didn't sit. I found out last night that you were hospitalized. I had no idea. No idea that anything was wrong. I just knew Troy had been distant, quiet. And yesterday, after I got a message from someone named Miles Harper, I realized I was being used. Claire blinked. Miles Harper? He said he works in private investigations, that he's been helping your father. He told me about the texts, about what Troy said, that I was the reason you collapsed. Erin's voice trembled slightly, but she caught herself. I didn't even know your name until last night. I swear to you, Claire, I never had a relationship with your husband. Not romantically, not emotionally. I was never involved with him that way. Claire's lips parted, but words didn't come. I had coffee with him twice, Erin said, voice tighter now. Once after a department meeting, once after a pitch review. Both times I thought it was casual, professional. I assumed he was married. He never said otherwise, but he never mentioned you either. Claire felt something shift inside her. Not relief, not pain, just movement, like a heavy curtain lifting an inch. I used to wonder if I was paranoid, Claire murmured, mostly to herself. If I'd exaggerated what I saw. You didn't. Erin's eyes shone with guilt. I looked through everything after that call. My phone, old chats. I didn't even know some of those messages existed. Claire looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, there are texts I never wrote, Claire. Messages that showed up in my log, but were never sent by me. They don't sound like me. One even said, "Can't stop thinking about that last time." I've never typed those words. Ever. Claire felt a chill. Erin stepped forward, her tone careful. Miles thinks Troy cloned my phone data somehow. Maybe through that app he helped me install. He said it was for company calendar syncing. Claire slowly exhaled. Her body sank back into the bed, heavy and stunned. So, he created the affair, Claire said quietly. Fabricated it, out of nothing. Erin nodded. And used it to isolate you. Discredit you. Claire's eyes welled, but no tears fell. Not yet. Why would someone do that? She whispered. To control the narrative, Erin replied. If you seem unstable, emotional, paranoid, then whatever you say loses weight. He protects himself by making you doubt yourself. Claire let the silence sit, long, sharp, echoing. Then, finally, do you have proof? Erin nodded. I've already sent everything to Miles. Phone logs, screen captures, app history. He's compiling a full report. He said your father plans to take legal action. Claire swallowed hard. Grace. Everything now was for Grace. Why did you come here, Erin? She asked softly. Erin looked down for a moment. Because when I found out who you were, what you went through, I realized I had a part in it, even if I didn't mean to. And because I've been lied to before. I know what it feels like to lose your grip on reality 1 inch at a time. No woman deserves that. Claire studied her for a long beat. Oh, I believe you, she said. Erin exhaled, her shoulders sagging slightly. Thank you, she whispered. I'm not angry at you, Claire added. Not anymore. Erin nodded slowly. If there's anything I can do, anything at all. There might be, Claire said, but not yet. A nurse stepped in to check Claire's vitals, giving a polite glance to Erin. I should go, Erin said. But I'll be in touch. Claire watched her leave. The door clicked shut, and in that soft click, something deeper sealed itself too. The lie was bigger than she thought, and now she wasn't the only one who knew it. Later that afternoon, Chuck returned to the hospital with a sealed envelope. He handed it to Claire without a word. Inside, a printout of Troy's cloud data, calendar entries, deleted call logs, location pings, app installations, and a spreadsheet tracking her moods according to Troy's labels: manic, withdrawn, Emotional. Hysterical. It had dates. Times. Even remarks. March 3rd. Accused me of texting coworker. Blamed it on hormones. Claire stared at it in horror. He was documenting me. For months. Chuck's jaw clenched. He was building a case, making you look unstable, planning something. Claire's fingers tightened around the paper. Custody. Chuck nodded. That's my guess. She looked up. What do we do now? Chuck's voice was calm, cold, sharp. We build a case too. Stronger, smarter, real. Claire turned back toward the window. Outside, the trees swayed in the wind, bending but never breaking. Neither would she. Not anymore. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The NICU was colder than Claire expected. Soft beeps floated through the dim, sterile air, each machine ticking like a quiet clock counting down towards something unknown. Claire stood behind the glass, arms folded across her chest, staring at the tiny body wrapped in tubes and soft cotton. Grace. So small, so still. Her chest rose and fell like butterfly wings, fragile but determined. Claire pressed her fingers against the glass, just slightly, as if her touch could reach across that barrier and wrap around her daughter. The ache in her chest was more than physical. It was the heaviness of stolen time, of a motherhood that had already begun in crisis. She whispered, "I'm sorry, baby girl. I should have seen this sooner." Behind her, footsteps. Soft, slow, familiar. She didn't need to turn. "Troy," she said without emotion. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, chin slightly lifted, like he always did when trying to look in control. "She's beautiful," he said. "Tiny, but strong, just like you." Claire didn't reply. Troy kept going. "I signed the NICU release forms while you were asleep. The hospital needed 2 signatures for the extended stay protocol." Her eyes narrowed. "Why wouldn't you wait for me? They needed it quickly. I thought I was helping." "You always do." He glanced at her. "Claire, I know you're upset, but I didn't come here to argue. I came because I miss you, and I miss us." She turned slowly, met his gaze. "You miss us?" Her voice was quiet, but sharp. "Or you miss the control." Troy sighed, taking a small step closer. "Can we not do this here? Not in front of—" Claire stepped back. "Don't pretend to be the grieving husband, Troy. Not after everything. I didn't cheat on you." "But you made me think you did," she snapped. "You built an entire illusion to make me question my reality." "It wasn't like that. You tracked my moods. You labeled them hysterical, withdrawn. You had an entire file on me like I was some HR problem you were prepping for termination." Troy's mouth opened, but no words came. Claire didn't need them. "I know what you were planning. Custody, full custody. You wanted me to break down, to look unstable. You were setting the stage months ago." His voice cracked slightly. "Claire, that's not true." "I saw the spreadsheet." Troy blinked. "I saw the logs, the notes, the messages you fabricated. Erin came here, Troy. She told me everything." He looked away just for a second, but it was enough. "You were going to take my daughter," Claire whispered. "You wanted me to lose everything." Troy shook his head. "No, I didn't know how to fix us. You were always overwhelmed, always emotional. I felt like I was walking on eggshells. So you decided to make me look crazy? I wanted a version of peace, he said, eyes suddenly glassy. And you wouldn't give it to me? Claire stared at him. You don't want peace. You want compliance. There's a difference. Silence. Then she said, I'm filing for separation. Troy stiffened. Claire, please. I'm documenting everything. With Miles, with the hospital, with Erin's testimony. You'll receive a formal request next week, and I'll be petitioning for supervised visitation pending the investigation. He stepped forward, his voice low. You don't want to do that. She didn't flinch. No, Troy. You don't want me to. He opened his mouth again, but she raised a hand, soft, but final. Leave. I want time alone with my daughter. He hesitated, then slowly turned and walked down the hallway, his shoulders slightly hunched for the first time. Claire stayed, watching until he disappeared around the corner. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt like the first safe step across a cracked floor. That evening, back in her hospital room, Chuck sat beside her with a folder on his lap. He tapped it lightly. I have something to show you. Claire looked up, exhausted but focused. Chuck opened the folder and pulled out a printout of an email chain. From Troy Whitmore to David Kerr, attorney. Subject, post-nup structure, medical history strategy. She read the header once, then again. Post-nup? She asked. Chuck nodded. He contacted a lawyer months ago. He wanted to draft a post-nuptial agreement that would reclassify marital assets as personal property based on emotional volatility and mental instability. Claire's hands trembled. He planned to use your medical records, Chuck continued. Anything he could twist to look like evidence of instability. His long game wasn't just custody, Claire. He was angling for a clean financial exit. Claire sat still, her breath shallow. I gave up teaching for him, she whispered. I gave up the job I loved, the independence, because he said he wanted us to focus on family. He said I was his home. Chuck reached over, placed a steady hand on hers. He was building a cage, Chuck said. And now we're tearing it down. Claire looked at the printout again, then at her father. I want to fight, she said. Not just for Grace, for me. For every woman who's ever doubted her own sanity because someone smiled while taking her apart. Chuck nodded once. Then let's begin. The room was quiet, but everything had changed. This was no longer a story of survival. It was the beginning of Claire's rise. Claire stood in front of the full-length mirror in her hospital room, the cotton gown hanging off her frame like a question mark. Her body looked foreign, smaller in some places, softer in others, like she'd shed a version of herself without warning. Her eyes were rimmed with fatigue, her lips pale, her shoulders a little stooped. But there was something else, steel, not the shiny, showy kind, the buried kind, the kind that held up bridges. Linda stepped in, holding a small bag from home. I brought you some real clothes. Figured you might want something that doesn't crinkle when you move. Claire gave a tired smile. Thank you. She slipped into the bathroom to change. The navy sweater hugged her arms gently, the soft cotton joggers warm against her skin. Simple, clean, hers. When she stepped out, Chuck was already waiting with a clipboard and a thin stack of paper. We need to start documenting your experience, he said, voice calm. Not just the big stuff. Everything. The microcontrols, the gaslighting, the contradictions. All of it. Claire sat down slowly on the edge of the hospital bed, taking the pen in hand. Where do I even start? She asked. Start with when it stopped feeling like love, Chuck said. The words lodged in her throat. She took a breath and wrote. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. Page after page poured out. Times when Troy had made her doubt herself, times he'd insisted he knew what was best, moments he'd joked about her memory lapses, moments he'd claimed she was too emotional to trust with decisions. By the time she stopped, her hand ached. Chuck picked up the stack and flipped through it briefly, his face unreadable. This is gold. You're building a truth no one can spin. Claire leaned back, her eyes drifting toward the incubator photo taped to the wall. Grace's tiny face, eyes closed in peaceful defiance. What happens now? She asked. We go public, Chuck said. Controlled, precise. I've already spoken with a legal advocacy group that helps women rebuild their voice after coercive control. They'll back you. We leak carefully, not to tabloids. Think regional news, legal blogs, women's advocacy platforms. We build momentum before the court filings even drop. Claire blinked. So, this is really happening? Chuck nodded. Yes. But you won't do it alone. A knock on the door interrupted them, a soft, quick rhythm. Claire turned. It was Miles Harper. He stepped in, all clean lines and composed energy. Tan blazer, black slacks, leather-bound notebook in hand. Claire had only met him once, briefly, but he carried himself like a man who never lost control, even in chaos. Sorry to intrude, Miles said, but I have something you should see. He walked over to the small table and opened his notebook, sliding out a series of photos, printed screenshots. One by one, he laid them out. Phone logs, geotags, Slack conversations. Then, one final piece. An image of Troy standing outside a downtown apartment building, holding a bouquet of yellow lilies. Claire froze. The flowers. Her flowers. Where was this? She asked, voice tight. South End, Miles replied. Unit registered under a shell company that traces back to one of Troy's business partners. A man named Darren Locke. Who's in the unit? Chuck asked. We don't know. Yet. But based on digital footprints, it's someone who uses Troy's shared Amazon account. Same login, different shipping address. Ordered prenatal vitamins 2 months ago. Claire's mouth fell open. No, that can't be. Miles held up a hand. We don't jump to conclusions, but it raises questions. Claire stared at the image. Troy. Yellow lilies. A different woman. All this time, she'd been defending herself against a fake affair. Was there a real one all along? Linda stepped in, wrapping an arm gently around Claire's shoulder. I don't understand, Claire whispered. Why go through the trouble of fabricating one affair if he was already... Because he wanted control of the narrative, Chuck answered. If you ever found out about this, he could frame it as reactionary. He could say you were projecting. Claire looked at Miles. Can we find her? I'm working on it, he said. But if she's pregnant... Claire's stomach twisted. I need to know the truth, she said. All of it. I don't care how much it hurts. I'm done living in shadows. Miles gave a single nod. I'll bring you what I find. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, he added, voice lower now, you're handling this better than most people would. You haven't collapsed. You haven't lashed out. You're staying focused. That takes grit. Claire didn't smile, but something softened in her eyes. After he left, Linda looked at her carefully. Are you okay? Claire stood and walked to the window. The sun was beginning to break through the clouds, casting golden streaks across the skyline. No, she said, but I'm getting there. Chuck placed the last document in a manila folder. "When you're ready, we file." Claire turned back to them. "I'm ready." And she meant it. For years, she'd kept the peace, smiled on cue, swallowed her instincts. Now, she was done performing. She wasn't the woman Troy thought he could manipulate. She was the woman who would make sure he never did it to anyone else. Claire walked slowly through the corridor of the hospital's family center, arms crossed tightly across her chest. The rhythmic squeak of her slippers on the linoleum was the only sound breaking the silence. She had just come from the NICU. Grace had opened her eyes today, just for a moment, and in that moment, Claire had felt something split wide open inside her, a kind of quiet power, fierce, rooted, like her daughter had passed her a baton, wordlessly, saying, "Go, fight, win." She stopped outside the consultation lounge where Chuck and Miles were already seated. The room was glass-walled, private but exposed, just like her life now. Chuck stood when she entered, but Claire waved him down. "I don't want this to feel like a courtroom," she said. Miles smiled slightly. "Then we'll keep it conversational." Claire nodded. She took the seat across from them, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Her body still felt weak, her pulse inconsistent, but her focus was razor-sharp. "I want to know everything about the woman in that apartment," she said. "Who she is, what she knows, if she's part of this or just another name on his ledger." "We're close," Miles said. "She's listed as primary tenant on the lease for that South End unit. No social media, no digital trail beyond basic utilities. But we did pull a visitor log from the building's concierge." He slid a sheet across the table. Names, dates, entry times. One repeated over and over. Sadie Emmons. Claire stared at it. "Doesn't ring a bell," she said. "She's not local. She moved here in March, listed as a contract designer for Whitmore Langston's Atlanta division, apparently transferred here under temporary creative development." Claire's brow furrowed. Troy never mentioned her. "Exactly," Chuck said. "And that's not an accident." "She's due in 6 weeks," Miles added. "We're assuming it's Troy's until we know otherwise." Claire let out a breath, low and tight. "He told me we should stop after 1, that it would be too hard to juggle our life with 2. He said I didn't have the temperament for it." Chuck's expression darkened. "He didn't want another child with you, because he was already planning one with someone else." Miles leaned forward. "Do you want to confront her?" Claire blinked. "I don't know." "You don't have to," he said quickly. "But we can arrange a safe, neutral space. If she's a victim in this too, she may be more helpful than we think." Claire's mind spun. All these years she had defended Troy, adjusted to him, doubted herself for his sake. And now there was another woman, another life he had built in tandem with hers, like 2 tracks running parallel, never meant to meet. Except now they had. "Set it up," she said. "I need to see her face." Miles nodded and stood. "I'll take care of it." Once he left, Claire looked at her father. "How did you stay so calm all this time?" Chuck's voice was quiet. "Because I've watched men like him before. In boardrooms. In press conferences. They don't explode, Claire. They erode. Slowly. They chip away until everyone forgets what the truth used to look like." Claire nodded slowly. "He almost had me convinced," she admitted. "He was grooming your silence. But now you have a voice. And power behind it." She met his gaze, and for the first time since the hospital, she smiled. A few days later, they arranged the meeting. Neutral location, downtown Charlotte. A private conference room in a co-working space managed by one of Chuck's companies. Miles would be nearby, just outside. and Claire would have full control of how long it lasted. When Sadie Emmons walked in, Claire's breath caught in her throat. She was tall, lean, with pale skin and soft auburn hair that looked freshly washed but unstyled. Her clothes were simple, matte grey dress, flats, no makeup. But it wasn't the simplicity that struck Claire. It was the expression, nervous, guarded, like someone already anticipating a blow. Sadie took the seat across from her slowly. "I almost didn't come," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But I've been alone in this for so long, I couldn't stay in the dark anymore." Claire said nothing. She just nodded once. "I met him at the Atlanta office. He said he was looking for someone to help with rebranding a side project. We had lunch once, then coffee, then he kissed me." Sadie looked down, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. "He told me he was separated, that you'd had a breakdown, that he was staying in the marriage for financial reasons. He said he was lonely." Claire's heart sank. It was a script, a manipulator's greatest weapon, the sob story. "I believed him," Sadie continued. "I didn't ask for proof. I just wanted to be wanted. He said he wasn't ready for another child. But when I told him I was pregnant, he said he'd support us. Quietly, for now." Claire cleared her throat. "Do you love him?" Sadie looked up, startled. "I don't know." Claire nodded again. "That's honest." Sadie leaned forward, her voice cracking. "If I'd known about you, about all this, I swear, Claire, I never would have—" "I believe you," Claire interrupted. "You're not the one who broke a vow." "He is." Sadie's eyes filled, but she blinked them back. "Are you going to take him to court?" she asked. "Yes," Claire replied. "For full custody. And I'm not doing it quietly." Sadie sat back, processing. "I'll testify," she said after a long pause. "If it helps. He lied to me too." Claire's voice softened. "It might, but don't do it for me. Do it for yourself." Sadie's hand slid to her stomach instinctively. And for her. A shared silence passed between them. No anger, no blame, just quiet knowing. Two women who had loved the same man and learned the same hard lesson. When the meeting ended, Claire stepped into the hallway where Miles was waiting. He studied her face. "Well?" Claire smiled faintly. "She's not my enemy." Miles nodded. "Then Troy's losing his leverage." Claire exhaled slowly as they stepped into the elevator, and for the first time, the descent didn't feel like a fall. It felt like rising. Claire stood in the corner of her kitchen, staring blankly at the kettle as steam curled up from its spout. The house was silent, save for the soft bubbling of water and the faint hum of the refrigerator. It was the first time she had been back home since the hospital. It didn't feel like home. Everything looked the same. The granite counters, the carefully curated spice rack, the framed black and white wedding photo on the wall, but the air felt stale, fake. Like a stage set that only worked when the cameras were rolling. She reached for the switch to the kettle, turning it off with a soft click. The mug she poured into trembled slightly in her hand. Sleep had been scarce. Her mind was full. Court filings, Grace's slow recovery, meetings with Miles and her father, emails from advocacy groups who now wanted her to speak publicly. Every piece of her life had become a puzzle that needed fixing. And then, of course, there was Sadie. She hadn't stopped thinking about her since their conversation. The raw honesty in her eyes, the fear, the misplaced hope. Claire had expected to feel jealous, maybe even bitter. Instead, she'd felt protective. That scared her more than anything. A soft knock came from the front door. She set the mug down and walked slowly to open it. It wasn't her father. It wasn't Miles. It was someone she hadn't seen in over a year. "Adam?" Claire blinked. He smiled, a little sheepish. "Hey, Claire." She stepped back automatically, stunned. "What are you doing here?" "I heard you were back," he said gently. "Linda told me. She thought maybe you'd want company that wasn't here to analyze data or file paperwork." Claire managed a small laugh, despite herself. "Wow. Leave it to my mother to outsource emotional support." "She said I made you laugh once," Adam said, "and that you could use a little light." Claire leaned on the edge of the door. "You drove all the way from Asheville just for that?" "Not just," he said. "I was in town for work. Tech conference. But yeah, I'd have made the drive if I wasn't." They stood there for a beat, the porch light casting a soft amber glow between them. Adam had always been kind. That rare kind of man who listened without trying to fix, who asked without pressing. Years ago, they'd taught at the same school, Claire in literature, Adam in computer science. He used to bring her caramel lattes when her students drove her up the wall. They'd been friends, nothing more. But there had been something once, a spark flickering under the surface, never acted on, until Troy. "Do you want to come in?" she asked, surprising even herself. "If it's not weird," he said. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not." He stepped in, glancing around the entryway. "Everything looks the same." "Too much," Claire said under her breath. She motioned toward the living room, and they sat, her on the arm of the couch, him on the opposite side, like two people feeling out the shape of a memory. "You look," Adam began, then stopped. "I was going to say good, but I don't think that's the right word." "I know what you meant." She smiled faintly. "I don't know what I look like right now. Exhausted, broken, awake." "You look like you're still standing," he said. Claire looked down at her hands. "Barely." "I read the article," he added quietly. "The one your dad leaked to the legal advocacy site. The blog post. I didn't know." "No one did," Claire said. "That's how it works. It's invisible until it isn't." Adam leaned forward slightly. "I'm proud of you." She blinked. "Why?" "Because you're still choosing the truth, even when it hurts." Claire looked at him, and something shifted in the silence. He wasn't just here as a friend. She could see it now, in the softness of his voice, the way his eyes lingered a second too long, the way he breathed a little slower when she looked at him. And yet, it didn't make her uneasy. It made her feel alive. "Adam," she started, unsure of what she meant to say. He held up a hand. "I'm not here to complicate things. I know you have a lot on your plate. I just wanted you to know. I never stopped thinking about you, even when you married him." Claire looked away. The room suddenly felt warmer, smaller. "I can't do anything right now," she said. "Not emotionally. Not ethically. I'm still untangling who I am without Troy's shadow over me." "I know," Adam said softly. "I'm not asking for anything, just offering space, whenever you need it." She nodded, her throat thick. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "Do you want to meet her?" Adam's eyebrows lifted. "Grace?" Claire nodded. He stood, slowly. "I'd be honored." They walked to the nursery in silence. It was still half-decorated, soft yellows and pale greens, a mobile of stars hanging over the crib. Claire leaned over and gently pulled back the blanket. Grace slept peacefully, her little mouth forming a perfect O as she breathed. Adam exhaled. "She's beautiful." "She's strong," Claire said. "She has you," he replied. Claire looked at him, then back at Grace. "She deserves the truth," she said quietly, "and a mother who isn't afraid to tell it." Adam turned to her, voice almost a whisper. "She has that too." As they stood together in the quiet room, something new settled between them. Not romance, not yet, but trust. A bridge forming over the brokenness. Not a rescue. A beginning. Claire watched as Grace's tiny fingers curled around her own, soft and instinctual. The nursery was hushed, filled only with the rhythmic sound of the baby monitor and the slow turn of the mobile above the crib. Stars and moons danced lazily through the air, casting shifting shadows on the wall. It should have been a quiet moment, a safe moment, but Claire's mind was anything but quiet. Troy had requested a private meeting, through his attorney. Miles had called earlier in the day, voice low but direct. He's not contesting custody yet, but he's asked for mediation, some sort of resolution without court. Says he wants to come to an understanding. Claire scoffed when she heard it. Understanding. As if that was even possible now. Still, after everything, the possibility of facing him, face to face, outside the courtroom, sent a rush of unease through her chest. She didn't want to give him that power again, but Chuck had advised her to consider it. "You hold the leverage," he'd said, "and nothing shows strength like showing up when they expect you to run." She turned as her phone buzzed quietly on the dresser. A text from Adam. "Thinking of you. Grace is lucky to have you." She didn't reply, but she stared at the words for a long moment before setting the phone down. Part of her wished she could lean into that softness, into Adam's gentleness, into the quiet promise of something better. But she couldn't. Not yet. Because unfinished business still loomed like a storm just beyond the horizon. The mediation took place in a sleek office suite downtown, all chrome and frosted glass and designer furniture. Claire walked in wearing a navy blazer over a cream blouse, her hair pulled into a clean low bun, makeup soft but deliberate. Miles walked beside her, calm and unreadable, while Chuck waited in the building's lower lobby, just in case. "You don't need me in the room," Chuck had said, "but you need to know I'm close." Claire nodded, grateful. As she entered the conference room, she felt the air change. There he was. Troy stood as she entered, that same easy smile on his face, the one that had once charmed her parents, her friends, her colleagues, the smile that had hidden so much. He wore a tailored suit, no tie, sleeves rolled slightly, a picture of relaxed confidence. But Claire could see the tension in his jaw, the tightness at the corner of his eyes. He was nervous. "Good. Claire," he said, nodding. She sat down without responding. Miles did the same. The mediator, a woman in her early 50s named Janet, offered a practiced smile. "We're here to explore the possibility of resolution regarding child custody, asset division, and any other matters that may not require formal litigation. Our goal is to create space for productive conversation." Claire folded her hands in her lap. "Let's talk then." Troy leaned in slightly. "I want to co-parent. That's my priority." Claire arched an eyebrow. "Now it is?" "I've made mistakes," he said quickly. "But I never stopped wanting to be a father." "You made spreadsheets about my emotional behavior," Claire said flatly. "You drafted post-nups behind my back. You fabricated an affair and tried to paint me unstable." His jaw flexed. "Claire, you were spiraling. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't ask for help. You didn't talk to me. You calculated me. Janet raised a hand gently. Let's keep this constructive. Claire breathed deeply, steadying herself. I'm not here to punish you, she said. But I won't hand my daughter to someone who sees control as love. Supervised visitation. No overnight stays. All communication through our attorneys. That's non-negotiable. Troy's calm exterior cracked, just slightly. She's my daughter too. Claire met his eyes. Then act like it. Respect the boundaries. Accept the consequences. There was a long silence. Then Troy looked away, fingers tapping against the table. Is this about him? Claire blinked. Who? That guy, Adam. The one who taught at your old school. You're seeing him again, aren't you? Claire didn't flinch. This isn't about Adam, or Sadie, or any other distraction you want to toss in to make yourself feel less guilty. Troy's face darkened. So you admit you're with him? Miles leaned forward. Let's not turn this into a character debate. Claire's personal relationships are not relevant to custody discussions unless you want us bringing Sadie and her unborn child into the equation. Troy's expression hardened. That was different. No, Claire said. It wasn't. You built a second life while pretending to save this one, and now you're mad because I'm learning how to breathe without you. Janet cleared her throat, voice firmer. Let's focus. Claire, you've made your terms clear. Troy, are you willing to agree to supervised visitation and structured communication? Troy didn't speak right away. Claire watched him closely. There it was. That flicker of pride folding in on itself. He knew he was cornered. I'll agree, he finally said. Temporarily. Claire nodded once. Then we're done here. She stood and walked out without another word, Miles close behind. In the hallway, she paused, breathing hard, adrenaline buzzing through her veins like a live wire. That was brutal, Miles said softly. It needed to be, Claire replied. Then she looked at him, eyes steady. He's not going to stop. Not really. Men like him don't lose gracefully. No, Miles said. But now he's losing publicly. And that matters. Claire exhaled, pressing her back against the cool wall. I don't know how this ends. With her safe, Miles replied. With you whole. She nodded, lips trembling slightly. You did good in there, he added. Claire looked toward the conference room, then back at him. Yeah, she whispered. I think I did. And for the first time since Grace was born, she let herself feel a small, almost fragile, taste of peace. Claire sat on the back porch of her mother's house, wrapped in a thick knit cardigan, a half-empty cup of tea, cooling beside her. The autumn wind drifted through the Carolina pines, stirring golden leaves across the deck. In the distance, wind chimes rang faintly, soft, hesitant music that matched the quiet in her chest. The mediation had left a mark, not just on paper, but on her psyche. She hadn't expected it to feel like grief, not grief for the marriage. That had been dead long before she'd admitted it. But grief for the version of herself that had once believed in it, believed in him. Troy had taken that part of her and slowly hollowed it out, piece by piece, until all that remained was a woman desperate to feel seen. Now there was no desperation, just quiet resolve. The screen door creaked behind her. Mind if I join? Adam asked. She glanced back at him and nodded. He walked barefoot across the wooden planks, hands in his pockets, the late daylight casting warm shadows on his face. He sat beside her, close but not too close, his presence gentle as always. Your mom's making pumpkin bread, he said. She insisted I stay for dinner. She always feeds people when she doesn't know what to say, Claire replied. It's her love language, Adam chuckled. Then I've been spoken to with a full bakery. Claire let out a soft laugh, the kind that came from deep in the ribs, unpracticed but real. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. Finally, Adam spoke. "How's Grace today?" "She smiled this morning," Claire said, like a real, intentional smile. It was small, but it felt like the whole world tilted. "She's strong," he said, "like her mom." Claire looked at him, unsure of what to say. There were so many things floating between them, unspoken, unfinished. "Why did you never say anything?" she asked softly. "Back when we were teaching." Adam looked down, his thumb running along the edge of the porch rail. "Because you were married, because you looked happy, and because I respected you too much to be one more man asking you for something." Claire swallowed. "You never asked me for anything. That was the problem. You never asked. But you saw me." He met her gaze, and for the first time, she let him see what she'd been hiding. "I used to wonder," she continued, "what my life would have been like if I'd made different choices, if I'd turned left instead of right, if I'd gone for what felt safe instead of what looked good on paper." Adam nodded slowly. "I used to wonder too, but life doesn't wait for us to figure it out. It just moves." Claire blinked back the burn in her eyes. "Do you think I'm broken?" "No." His voice was firm. "I think you're rebuilding. That's different." She looked away, tears slipping down her cheek before she could stop them. Adam reached out, not to pull her in, but to gently place his hand over hers. "I'm not trying to fix you, Claire. I just want to walk beside you, if you'll let me." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she simply nodded, fingers tightening around his. A moment passed. Then her phone buzzed on the porch table. She wiped her eyes, took a breath, and picked it up. Unknown number. One voicemail. She hesitated, then pressed play. Troy's voice filled the space, low and composed. "Claire, I'm calling because you need to stop. This public campaign, these interviews, the press, it's getting out of hand. I've received calls from board members, clients, my mother. If you think you're helping Grace by tearing everything apart, think again. You're making things harder. For everyone." The message clicked off. Claire stared at the screen, her jaw locked. Adam watched her carefully. "You okay?" She set the phone down, her voice calm. "He's unraveling." Adam waited. "I gave him every chance to make peace with this," she said. "Every exit ramp, every opportunity to come clean. And he chose a voicemail full of veiled threats." Adam looked at her closely. "What are you going to do?" Claire turned toward him, a new clarity settling in her eyes. "I'm going to tell the whole story." His brow lifted. "You mean?" "Yes. A full interview. Not just blog posts or press leaks. I'm going to sit in front of a camera and say everything, from the beginning. Let people see the face of coercive control. Let women hear what it sounds like before it steals years of their life." Adam nodded slowly, pride flickering in his gaze. "Are you sure?" Claire stood, wrapping the cardigan tighter around her. "No, but I'm tired of asking for permission." She looked out at the horizon, where the sky melted into soft gold and deep rose. The world was changing, and for once, she wasn't trying to stop it. "Besides," she added, "I want Grace to grow up knowing that her mother didn't whisper the truth. She shouted it." Adam stood beside her, quiet. "I'll be there," he said. "When you speak, I'll be there." Claire glanced at him. "I know," she said. And for the first time in a long time, She didn't feel like she was standing at the edge of something broken. She felt like she was on the verge of becoming whole. The production lights were warm against Claire's skin, soft but persistent, casting her in the kind of glow that made everything feel more permanent than it was. She sat upright in the chair, microphone clipped to her blazer, hands resting in her lap. The studio was quiet, minimal. One camera, one producer, one story. This wasn't a media circus. It was a statement. The producer, Layla, mid-40s, composed, gently authoritative, gave her a small nod from behind the camera. "Take your time," she said. "We'll edit around pauses. Speak how you feel it." Claire nodded, trying to settle the flurry in her chest. There was no script, just truth. She took a breath, then another. "I used to think abuse had to leave a bruise," she began, her voice low and clear. "That you had to see it, name it, prove it. But what if it's quieter? What if it's hidden behind polite smiles and high-end kitchens? What if it wears a suit and signs birthday cards with little hearts?" She paused, her throat tightening. "My name is Claire Whitmore. I was married to Troy Whitmore, a partner at Whitmore Langston Financial, and this is the story I kept quiet for far too long." She let that sit in the air. "I met Troy in grad school. He was brilliant, confident. Everyone wanted to be around him. I was flattered when he noticed me. He made me feel special, like I was the only one in a room full of voices. That's how it starts. That illusion of being chosen." Her voice wavered slightly, but she didn't stop. But slowly, the compliments became conditions. The support turned into strategy. He started logging my behaviors, what I ate, how often I cried, how many times I overreacted. I found spreadsheets, color-coded. Behind the camera, Layla leaned forward, visibly drawn in. He told me I was lucky to have him, that no one else would tolerate my moods, that I didn't have the patience to be a good mother, the logic to handle stress, the resilience to keep up with him. And I believed him. Because emotional manipulation doesn't come in shouts. It comes in whispers you mistake for your own thoughts. Claire swallowed hard. I almost didn't recognize myself when I finally left. Another pause, then she added quietly, "I had to relearn how to trust my own voice. Even now, speaking feels like walking barefoot across broken glass. But I have a daughter. Her name is Grace. And one day, when she asks me who I became after the storm, I want her to know I didn't stay silent." Layla tapped the button to stop recording. Silence hung in the room like a held breath. Then, "That was powerful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire exhaled, her shoulders trembling with the release of it all. "You sure you want this out there?" Layla asked. "It's going to ripple." "I want it to," Claire said. "Let it ripple." 3 days later, the interview aired. It wasn't on a major network. Just a mid-size independent digital outlet with a solid viewership. But the moment it hit the internet, it spread like wildfire. Claire hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected the thousands of comments, the emails, the letters from strangers, women, men, even teenagers. People who had been silenced for years, suddenly flooding her inbox with their own fragments of truth. I thought it was just me. I never had words for it before. I left after watching this. She sat in her mother's living room, baby Grace asleep on her chest, while Chuck scrolled through social media posts on his tablet. "You've struck something deep," he said, his voice unreadable. "I didn't plan to become a voice for anyone," Claire replied. Chuck set the tablet down and looked at her carefully. Sometimes the best leaders are the ones who never wanted the microphone. Before she could reply, her phone buzzed. Miles. She picked it up. "Hey. You're trending," he said dryly. "But that's not why I'm calling. What's going on?" Whitmore Langston released a statement this morning. They're placing Troy on administrative leave pending internal investigation. Anonymous tips came in, documents, emails. It's not just you anymore. Claire sat up straighter. Wait, what kind of documents? Looks like he manipulated financials on personal projects, redirected company funds into that private apartment unit. Her mouth dropped open slightly. So it's not just personal misconduct anymore. Nope, it's fraud. Claire blinked. Do I testify? If it comes to that, yes, Miles said. But right now, it's moving fast. His foundation's crumbling from the inside. She hung up and sat in silence for a moment, heart pounding. The emotional weight she'd carried for so long, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the fear, was finally turning into something solid, something that mattered beyond the walls of her own pain. Justice, consequences, not vengeance, truth. Later that evening, Adam dropped by, carrying a grocery bag with her favorite sparkling water and a pint of lemon sorbet. "I figured you forgot to eat," he said, stepping inside. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Did my mother send you?" "Nope. All me." They sat at the kitchen table, the glow of the pendant light warm between them. "I saw the interview," he said. "Every word." Claire met his gaze. "Was it too much?" "No," Adam said. "It was brave and necessary." She exhaled slowly, emotions rising again. "I didn't expect to feel so exposed." "That's because you opened the wound in public," he said. "But you didn't bleed alone. You gave people a map." Claire stared at him. "I'm not the same person I was," she whispered. "I know," Adam said. "And you're better, stronger. Not because of what you survived, but because of what you chose after." Their hands touched, quiet and tentative, across the table, and Claire, for once, didn't flinch from the warmth. Claire sat in the back seat of her father's car, hands clasped tightly in her lap as the city lights of Charlotte passed by in soft streaks of gold and blue. The gala invitation still rested in her purse, a cream envelope with gold foil embossing. Whitmore Langston, annual charitable benefit. She hadn't been invited directly, of course, but someone had made sure the invitation found her anyway. "This is a bad idea," Chuck said, his eyes fixed on the road. "Maybe," Claire replied quietly. "But I need to look him in the eye." Chuck didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was his protest. The car pulled up in front of the event hall, valet attendants weaving through a sea of black suits and shimmering dresses. Claire stepped out slowly, smoothing the fabric of her deep emerald gown. It was simple, but commanding. Her hair swept into a low twist, her makeup clean and sharp. She looked like herself, but stronger. Inside, the gala was everything she remembered. Grand chandeliers, clinking glasses, polite laughter that never quite reached the eyes. The scent of expensive cologne and catered hors d'oeuvres hung in the air like a mask. And then she saw him, Troy. He stood near the bar, deep in conversation with two board members, a champagne flute in hand. His tuxedo was flawless, smile perfectly measured. But beneath it, something was off. There was a twitch to his jaw, a strain behind his eyes. He saw her the moment she stepped further in. For a beat, time stalled. Then, like clockwork, he crossed the room with that same old charm painted on his face. "Claire," he said, voice smooth but brittle. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I bet," she said evenly. I assume this is about making a scene? He said quietly, leaning in. She tilted her head. You made the scene, Troy. I'm just stepping into the light. He chuckled. Dry, forced. You think airing our personal life like a podcast is going to earn you something? Sympathy? No. I think it might save someone else from repeating my mistake. His eyes flared slightly, but he recovered quickly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. You've always had a flair for dramatics. Claire smiled. And you've always had a flair for hiding behind polished floors and shiny charities. You don't belong here anymore, he said. This isn't your world. Claire stepped forward, just enough for him to feel it. No, Troy. I never belonged in your version of it, but I'm not here for your approval. I'm here because the truth doesn't shrink when you dress it up in a tux. At that moment, Chuck appeared at her side, calm but firm. Problem? He asked, voice low. Troy stiffened, mask slipping for a fraction of a second. No problem, he said, backing away. Just a misunderstanding. Claire turned without another word, heading toward the main hall. People watched her as she passed, some with curiosity, others with admiration, a few with discomfort. She was used to all three now. The gala program was already underway, a series of speeches and donor recognitions filling the stage with polite applause. But then, unexpectedly, the MC stepped aside. Before we continue, she said, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge a guest in the room whose story has recently made waves, not for its tragedy, but for its courage. Claire froze. We are honored tonight by the presence of Claire Whitmore, the MC continued, whose advocacy for emotional abuse awareness has touched thousands. Claire, would you stand? Claire stood slowly, her heart pounding. The room erupted into applause. Not the kind that fills a space out of obligation. This was different. It felt like recognition, validation. For a moment, her eyes flicked to Troy. He was seated now, his champagne untouched, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. Good. Let him watch. After the event, Claire stepped outside to get air, the city night cool against her skin. Adam was waiting by the curb, hands in his pockets. You came, she said. I said I would. He looked at her, and something in his gaze was different this time. Not just admiration, awe. You were incredible in there, he said. I didn't speak. You didn't have to. Claire looked out across the skyline, breathing deeply. I used to think I had to be quiet to be safe, that if I just stayed small enough, he wouldn't find a reason to twist things. Adam stepped closer. And now? Now, she said softly, I'm not afraid of being seen. He reached for her hand, warm and steady. Then let them see you. And for the first time in years, Claire didn't feel like she was surviving her story. She felt like she was rewriting it. The office was cold, not in temperature, but in tone. The kind of sterile that made everything feel temporary, like nothing real could last long here. Claire sat in the reception area of the district attorney's office, her fingers gently tracing the strap of her purse. She wasn't nervous, not exactly, but she wasn't calm either. Adam had offered to come, so had her dad, but this she needed to do alone. The door opened, and a woman in a charcoal gray pantsuit stepped out. Claire Whitmore? Claire stood. Yes. Detective Harlan's waiting for you. She followed the woman down a hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and ink. Offices blurred past her, every door half open, full of quiet tension. This place didn't scream drama. It hummed with it, like a wire strung too tight. Detective Harlan looked up from a manila folder as she entered. Mid-50s, clean-shaven, calm eyes that seemed to measure everything and everyone. He stood and extended a hand. "Ms. Whitmore, thank you for coming in." "Of course," Claire said, shaking it. "Please, have a seat." She did, hands folded in her lap, voice steady. "I know you've already shared a lot in public," Harlan said, opening the folder. "But what we need now is a detailed sworn statement. Not just about the emotional coercion, which is important, but about the financial misdirection, the fraudulent documents, anything you witnessed firsthand." Claire nodded. "I'm ready." And she meant it. For over an hour, she spoke. She recounted the private bank account she'd stumbled upon by accident, the unauthorized wire transfers from their joint fund, the digital spreadsheet labeled Asset Allocation Forecast that had, on a closer look, included miscategorized real estate purchases and misreported company reimbursements. She described the strange phone calls Troy used to take in their guest bathroom, door locked. The times he'd rewritten their expense records after reviewing their financial planner's report. The day she'd received a forwarded email meant for someone else, an attorney named Blanche, that mentioned a property in Troy's name she never knew existed. Harlan took notes, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. When she was finished, he leaned back. "This corroborates what we've been piecing together," he said. "We now have 3 internal witnesses, 2 whistleblower emails, and your account. If we can access the financial records tied to your name and the marriage, it could seal things." "I can authorize that," Claire said. "Whatever you need." Harlan offered a brief smile. "You've been through more than most, but you're helping build something that lasts. Not just justice, awareness." Claire's eyes flickered, misted for a moment, but she didn't let them fall. "Thank you," she whispered. As she left the office, her phone buzzed. "Adam, dinner tonight? Or do you need quiet?" She smiled at the screen, pausing on the steps outside the building. "Claire, dinner." "But something slow. I'm tired." "Adam, slow is my specialty. See you at 6. She stared up at the sky for a moment, blue fading into a soft lavender. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked to her car, each step more certain than the last. At Adam's apartment, the lights were low, candles flickering gently on the table. The scent of roasted garlic and lemon hung in the air. Soft jazz played from a speaker tucked near the window. Claire let herself in, shrugging off her coat. "You did all this?" she asked, a smile pulling at her lips. "I do it every night," Adam said from the kitchen. "Just usually for one." He handed her a glass of water with lemon and mint, then kissed her cheek softly, almost hesitantly. They ate slowly. Talked about everything and nothing. And for the first time in what felt like months, Claire let herself lean back, breathe, and not brace for something to go wrong. After dinner, they sat on the couch, her legs curled beneath her, his arm behind her shoulders, but not around her. The unspoken space between them held more than any touch could. "Tomorrow's the board meeting," she said quietly. "Troy's going to find out he's being formally investigated." Adam looked at her. "You worried about how he'll react?" "No," she said. "I'm just wondering what it'll feel like when it's really over." Adam was quiet for a moment, then turned slightly toward her. "Probably not how you expect. Endings rarely feel clean. They just shift something, move a weight you forgot you were carrying." Claire exhaled. "I want that shift." "It's already happening," he said. You're not who you were, Claire. She nodded, fingers playing with the edge of her sweater. I'm trying not to be. You don't have to try so hard anymore, he said gently. You're allowed to just be. The silence between them deepened, safe, familiar. Then Adam leaned in, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. May I kiss you? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Claire blinked, her heart stalling just long enough to feel it. Then she nodded, and as his lips met hers, soft and sure, the world didn't disappear. It settled. For the first time in a long time, she felt her life catching up to her, and instead of fearing it, she opened her arms to it. The morning of the board meeting arrived with a slow-burning tension in Claire's chest, like the air before a thunderstorm. She sat at the kitchen island, sipping coffee she barely tasted, watching the news flicker across the muted television in the corner. Troy's face filled the screen. Sources confirm that Whitmore Langston's internal audit has revealed financial discrepancies linked to partner Troy Whitmore. The firm is expected to make a formal statement later today. Claire muted the TV and closed her eyes. This was real, no more whispers. No more hiding behind closed doors or wondering if she was imagining things. The truth was stepping into the light, and for the first time in years, it wasn't dragging her down with it. Grace cooed in her bassinet beside her, little fists flailing gently, her chubby cheeks rosy from sleep. Claire reached out, brushed her daughter's forehead with the back of her fingers. You don't even know what you saved me from, she whispered. Her phone buzzed. Chuck, board meeting begins in 20. You sure you don't want to come? Claire looked down at her daughter. Claire, I think I've shown up enough. Today, I just want to be mom. At Whitmore Langston, Chuck sat at the long walnut conference table, surrounded by stone-faced executives. The room buzzed with whispers as Troy entered, every ounce of his posture still defiant. But his eyes were different. There was no confidence left in them, just calculation. The managing partner stood. Mr. Whitmore, before we proceed with standard agenda items, the board would like to address recent discoveries made by our audit team. Troy didn't blink. I assume you're referring to the false accusations floating around in the press. Chuck leaned forward, hands clasped, voice low and deliberate. We've received documentation from 3 separate sources. None of them are the media. Troy's lips thinned. Offshore accounts, another board member added. Misallocated reimbursements. You've been using company funds to cover private assets, Troy. That's absurd. It's traceable. Chuck opened a folder and slid it across the table. Your mistake was using the company's tax attorney to sign off on the Shelby property. Claire wasn't listed, but the joint marital trust was. You made it a firm liability. Troy's jaw tightened. This isn't a personal attack, Chuck said. It's a professional reckoning. You think this will hold up? Troy scoffed. She's your daughter. No, Chuck replied calmly. She's a witness and a whistleblower. You built your house on lies, Troy, and now it's crumbling. The board voted, unanimously. Troy was suspended indefinitely, with a recommendation for criminal investigation. He stood, chest rising and falling, but said nothing. He looked at Chuck, then around the room as if searching for someone who might still be on his side. No one met his gaze. He walked out, alone. That evening, Claire stood barefoot in the backyard of her mother's house, watching the wind play through the tall grass near the fence. The sun was just dipping past the horizon, casting the sky in gold and lavender. Adam appeared at the back door, 2 mugs in hand. Chamomile or peppermint? He asked. Chamomile, she said, reaching for it. He stood beside her, the silence between them familiar and soft. "Chuck called," he said. "It's official. Troy's out." Claire nodded slowly. "He'll fight it." "Drag it out." "Probably. But he's exposed now. The story's no longer his to control." She sipped her tea, her hands warming against the ceramic. "It doesn't feel victorious." "No," Adam said. "Because this was never about revenge." Claire turned to him, eyes searching. "Then what was it about?" "Truth, accountability, and starting over." She looked down, then back at him. "I don't know who I am without the damage." Adam placed his mug on the porch railing and took hers gently, setting it beside his. "You're someone who stood up, who told the truth, who protected your child when everything in you was breaking. That's who you are." Claire's breath caught. Her eyes shimmered, not with sadness, but with the weight of being seen. "Do you still want this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Me? With all of this mess?" "I don't want the mess," Adam said, "but I want you. And healing isn't about perfection. It's about walking through the mess together." She stepped closer, resting her head against his chest, the sound of his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "Then stay," she murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." As the last light of the day slipped behind the trees, Claire felt something shift. Not an ending, not yet, but something new beginning. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains, warming Claire's skin as she sat cross-legged on the nursery floor. Grace giggled in her crib, kicking her little feet into the air, her laugh a string of music that pierced through the last haze of sleep. Claire smiled, letting her daughter's joy soak into her bones. She hadn't felt this calm she couldn't remember. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chuck. "Chuck, got a call from a local non-profit. They saw the segment on your story. Want to meet. Think you'd be a great voice for their campaign on emotional abuse awareness." Claire stared at the screen, heart slowly swelling. She thought of all the years she felt invisible, thought of the nights she curled around her shame, the mornings she painted on a face that wasn't hers, the fear, the isolation. Now, someone wanted to hear her voice. She typed back quickly, "Claire, tell them yes. I'll meet whenever they're ready." Behind her, Grace squealed again, throwing a plush giraffe onto the floor. Claire laughed softly, picked it up, and sat it back in her daughter's hands. "We're going to do some good, sweetheart," she whispered. "You and me." Later that day, she stood in the kitchen helping her mother, Barbara, chop vegetables for dinner. The rhythm of the knife against the board was soothing, the scent of garlic and onion filling the space. Barbara glanced over. "You seem lighter." Claire shrugged, smiling. "Maybe I am." "It's not just the case, is it?" Claire paused. "No, it's more than that. It's like I've started breathing again, for real this time." Barbara reached out, brushing Claire's cheek. "You fought your way back to yourself, and I've never been prouder." Claire blinked quickly, emotions threatening to rise. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Barbara wiped her hands and went to answer it. Claire stayed behind, adjusting the burner on the stove. Then she heard a voice, familiar, uneasy. "Hi, Barbara. Is Claire home?" Her chest tightened. She turned slowly, and there he was. Sabrina, Troy's assistant. No, former assistant. Claire stepped into view, wiping her hands on a towel. "Sabrina?" Sabrina looked nervous, clutching her handbag like a shield. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I didn't know where else to go." Claire glanced at her mother, who quietly stepped aside to give them space. "Come in," Claire said softly. "Let's talk." They sat in the sunroom, Grace watching from her baby swing, babbling. Sabrina wrung her hands. "I've already given a statement to the investigators, but there's something else, something I need to tell you." Claire sat still. "Go on." "Troy's building a case, not just a defense. He's trying to turn this around, to make you look like the manipulator. He's contacting old colleagues, digging into your medical records from the miscarriage, claiming emotional instability." Claire's heart dropped. "He said," Sabrina continued, "that you were too fragile to handle truth, and that this whole thing was a vengeful tantrum." Claire closed her eyes. She shouldn't be surprised. But hearing it from someone else, out loud, it still hit her like a punch to the chest. "I know I should have come sooner," Sabrina said, voice shaking. "But I was scared, and I was loyal to the wrong person for too long." Claire opened her eyes, the fire in them soft but steady. "You came now. That matters." Sabrina's eyes filled. "I thought he loved you, Claire. The way he talked about you in the beginning. I really believed it." "I did too," Claire whispered. They sat in silence for a long moment, the baby's soft sounds the only background noise. Finally, Sabrina reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. "There are files on here, emails, expense reports, even voicemails he left me when he thought no one was watching. I don't want anything from you. I just want to help." Claire took the flash drive carefully, her fingers trembling. "Thank you," she said. Sabrina stood, brushing a tear away. "If there's a trial, I'll testify." Claire nodded. As Sabrina left, Barbara returned, standing in the doorway. "You okay?" Claire looked down at the drive in her hand. "I think I just got the last piece I needed." That night she sat on the back porch with Adam, her legs stretched across his lap, the flash drive on the table beside them. "You're not going to like what's on that," he said, eyes on the stars. "I don't need to like it," she replied. "I just need it to be over." He looked down at her, brushing her hair back. "You amaze me, you know that?" Claire leaned against him. "I'm starting to believe I could amaze myself too." As the crickets sang around them, she felt the heaviness in her bones begin to lift, like someone finally untied the anchor she didn't realize she was dragging. One more chapter, one more breath, and maybe, finally, freedom. The courtroom was silent except for the rustle of paper and the ticking of the wall clock above the judge's bench. Claire sat at the front, hands clasped in her lap, her heart steady for the first time in months. Troy sat just feet away, still in his tailored suit, still holding his posture like armor. But his eyes were hollow. There was no fire left in him, only calculation dulled by consequence. Claire didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Today wasn't about him anymore. The judge's voice cut through the stillness, reading the summary judgment of the court. Based on evidence presented and witness testimony, including whistleblower statements and submitted documentation, the court finds sufficient grounds for full asset forfeiture proceedings, disbarment from legal practice, and criminal referral for financial misconduct. Troy exhaled through his nose, barely audible. Claire remained still. As the gavel struck once, sharp, final, it felt like something inside her let go. Not rage, not grief, but the need to carry them anymore. Chuck leaned forward, gently placing a hand on her back as the courtroom began to shift. Lawyers standing, chairs scraping. "You did it," he whispered. Claire gave a quiet nod, her eyes welling. "We did it." They exited through the side hallway, avoiding cameras. Outside, Adam waited with Grace in her stroller, bundled in soft pink blankets, wide-eyed and blinking at the autumn sun. Claire crouched beside her daughter, smiling through the tightness in her chest. "It's done," she whispered, brushing her baby's cheek. "It's really done." Adam bent down and kissed the top of her head. She'll never have to wonder if her mom fought. Claire stood, eyes meeting his. "I want to take her somewhere, away from all of this, just for a few days." He smiled. "I already packed a bag." The cabin was tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains, surrounded by trees just starting to flame into gold and amber. Claire hadn't been there since childhood, before things got complicated, before adulthood carved her into pieces. Now, with Grace curled in a sling against her chest and Adam unpacking groceries behind her, she felt like she'd stepped into a softer version of herself. They lit a fire that night, the crackling wood filling the space with warmth. Grace slept in the bassinet by the window, tiny fists relaxed. Adam poured 2 mugs of tea and handed her one. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his cup. She clinked hers gently against his. "To breathing again." They sat in silence, letting the stillness settle. No phones, no headlines, no eyes watching, just them. Claire leaned into him, her voice low. "I thought if I got justice, I'd feel triumphant." "You don't?" he asked. She shook her head. "I feel free, but I also feel sad, for who I had to become to survive, for who I might have been." Adam looked at her, steady and kind. "You became who you were meant to be, strong, whole, and full of grace." She smiled softly. "You always say the right thing." "No," he said, brushing his fingers along her jaw. "I just tell the truth." Claire looked down, tears pricking her eyes. Not from pain, but release. "You know the hardest part?" she whispered. "It wasn't the betrayal. It was believing I didn't deserve better. And now, she said, meeting his gaze, "I believe I do." They kissed slowly, no urgency, just the quiet confirmation that this was real, that they'd made it here, together. A week later, Claire stood in front of a packed auditorium at a local women's center, invited to speak for the first time. The crowd was quiet as she adjusted the mic, nerves fluttering in her stomach, but behind them, a calm resolve. She looked out and saw not strangers, but mirrors. Women who knew. Women who had lived in silence, in shadow, behind smiles. "I used to think emotional abuse wasn't real because I couldn't point to bruises," Claire began, her voice steady. "But it leaves scars just the same. On your mind, your spirit, your identity." She paused, letting the words breathe. "I stayed because I was convinced it would get better. I stayed because he told me love meant sacrifice. I stayed because the world told me I was lucky to have someone so successful." Another pause. "But what I know now is this. Love doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't make you question your worth. And it never, ever, asks you to disappear." Several women wiped tears. Claire scanned the crowd. "I left when I realized my daughter deserved to see her mother whole, and that I deserved to be too." Applause rose, tentative at first, then swelling. Later, as people lined up to thank her, a woman in her 60s stepped forward, silver hair, trembling hands. "I thought I was too old to start over," the woman said softly. "But maybe I'm not." Claire reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "It's never too late to remember who you are." That night, she sat on the porch of her own townhouse. Small, modest, but hers. Grace slept peacefully inside. Adam worked late, but had left a note tucked under her teacup. "You're braver than you know." Always. Claire stared out at the quiet street, the warm glow of porch lights flickering from house to house. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. She had found love not just in someone else, but in herself, in her daughter, in truth. And that was more than enough. She exhaled slowly, one hand resting on her heart, the other on her lap, where a soft breeze brushed over her skin like a promise that tomorrow would come, and she was ready for it. Thanks for watching Sky Millionaire, where kindness meets real life. At Sky Millionaire, we believe every act of generosity deserves to be shared. So stay tuned and keep spreading hope with Sky Millionaire.